Hi, everyone. This is Amie Wright. I am the Executive Director of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, aka TCAF, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to celebrate Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Amie Wright about what attendees can expect at the 2026 Toronto Comic Arts Festival. Based in Ontario, Amie Wright is a comics librarian and public historian who's been organizing comics programming in Canada and the United States since 2013. Amie has created in-person and virtual programming for New York Comic Con, San Diego Comic Con, the American and Ontario Library Associations, and the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. Amie is the former manager of school outreach, MyLibraryNYC at the New York Public Library, and the former inaugural president of Graphic Novels and Comics Roundtable of the American Library Association. A current public historian PhD candidate at Carleton University in Ottawa, researching the history of comic censorship in Canada, Amie also teaches a comics course in the Department of History at Carleton. Continuing her initial effort from last year, Amie is the executive director of the 2026 Toronto Comic Arts Festival, also known as TCAF. Considered to be amongst the premier comic arts festivals in the world, TCAF is an annual two-day festival in downtown Toronto. Held since 2003, TCAF is unique for its scale and scope, welcoming more than 28,000 local and international visitors and over 315 artists, and its continued focus on independent arts culture and accessibility, remaining a free public and non-commercial arts and cultural festival. TCAF 2026 is being held from June 6th to 7th at the Toronto Metropolitan University's Mattamy Athletic Centre, with additional programming in the surrounding neighbourhood. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Amie Wright about what attendees can expect at the 2026 Toronto Comic Arts Festival. So, Amie Wright, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thanks so much for having me here.
I appreciate your time. I know you are very busy, so I do appreciate your time. It's been literally a year since we last spoke, and you've been keeping very busy in preparation for the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. So for those few who don't know about it, how would you describe the festival to someone?
I mean, maybe the first thing, and we should probably address this, is how to pronounce our acronym. So we're TCAF. So if you think of like TCAF, so the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, and we are one of the largest independent comic arts festivals in the world. And we happen now the first weekend in June every year. And we're bringing together more than, this year is actually larger than we've had. I think we're probably up to about 350 different artists from all around the world and 50 publishers from all around the world too.
That's impressive. I would have to say it's the largest independent comic arts festival in Canada, I would say.
I think so. I mean, MCAF has been really crushing it and just doing a fantastic job. The Montreal Comic Arts Festival, they're outside, of course. So we're a slightly different variety in terms of we're indoors, they're outside, but they have been bringing in a lot of vendors and artists, which is actually great. Like, I feel like we're stronger for having two very vibrant comic arts festivals in Canada right now, but we are definitely the oldest. So like the oldest, longest running, largest independent comic arts festival in Canada.
That's amazing, that's for sure. People always talk about it, which is tremendous. Let's talk about your role. What exactly do you do at TCAF?
So I am TCAF's executive director. So the short way of saying it is I am responsible for all of the oversight of the festival. So figuring out every aspect of working with my very talented team, figuring out logistical aspects of the space, working with publishers, working with programming decisions, and figuring out what the festival looks like year over year. And also running it, I mean, I think something that maybe sometimes people forget is we are a nonprofit festival. So it's also the logistical aspects of just running, a nonprofit arts festival, not the most receptive environment to arts festivals these days. I think for anybody working in nonprofit or art spaces, times are challenging.
It is definitely a challenge. In fact, I talked to some creators from Nova Scotia, and they're really under the gun now with government removing some of the funding for the arts. So I'm hoping that's not a trend in Canada, but we do have to put our hand up and say, look, this is important. And I think a lot of people recognize that. And you don't do this alone. I mean, you've got a team helping you out. Can you talk a bit about some of the folks who are helping you with this event?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, TCAF has always been with a lot of people behind the scenes doing work. If you go to our website, you can see some core members of our team. So, we have more than a dozen people that are working on the festival. We have producers behind the scenes working on logistical challenges, also working on programming decisions. We have folks working on our marketing and communications. Also, our digital experience, like thinking about things like uploading things to the website, making sure that all of our content makes sense across the various digital platforms. We have volunteer coordinators. TCAF is one of like many arts festivals. We have a core part-time team, but we also have so many different volunteers. And we're actually very excited this year. We think our largest number of volunteers ever. We have more than 275 people who've signed up to volunteer for the festival.
Wow, that's amazing. For attendees who want to attend this event, can you talk about some of the new activities or interactions, events they might experience?
Absolutely. So, I mean, one of the things, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, and my apologies if so, that makes TCAF unique is we are a free to attend festival in downtown Toronto. Saturday and Sunday, the first weekend in June, you can head down to the Mattamy, aka the old Maple Leaf Gardens, and see TCAF. This, of course, will be our second year at our new location. And this year, one of the things we're able to do is actually offer even more artist space. So we're activating a different area of the Mattamy. So we actually do have artists on the fourth floor concourse this year. And this year, we're also hosting a few exhibits. So we have an exhibit from Mint, which is the Manga International Network team. This is a group of artists, editors, and Japanese publishing industry executives that are actually coming from Japan. So this is one of our largest group of international guests ever to come since 2019. So we're very excited about that. Mint had previously been at Columbus Crossroads in the fall and done an exhibit for Billie Ireland. And so that exhibit is coming to TCAF. We also have an exhibit coming from our partners at the Montreal Comic Arts Festival and Confluence, which is a spotlight on Quebec comic arts. And so that exhibit will also be going into TCAF. We have partnerships with the Hand-Eye Society. So our friends working within video games and community collaboration in Toronto, they'll have an interactive display that will be up at TCAF. And then we're super excited to welcome back for the second year Canada Comics Open Library. They will have, and again, an immersive sort of hands-on zine making exhibit as part of TCAF. So we have, more than 350 plus artists who'll be exhibiting, more than 50 plus publishers, and we'll also have exhibits and interactive displays, programming, and activities for all ages.
Wow, that's a lot. There's just a little bit of something for everybody, I guess you could say.
Hoping, yeah.
Yeah. Is there a theme for this year's event?
So this year's event, one of the things we're most happy about is I think TCAF has always done a really great job in spotlighting artists from Canada, but from around the world. We've often said that TCAF is really about inviting the world to Toronto and Toronto to the world. And we do have the largest number of international guests since 2019. And so our theme is very much, comics as a global form of visual narrative and community collaboration. So we do have a large number of Japanese manga artists coming this year. We also have our first cohort of comic artists coming from India. We have several comic artists coming from Latin America and many publishers and individual artists coming from more than a dozen different countries.
That's very encouraging. So it just proves to show that comics are a global medium.
100%.
Absolutely, yeah. Can you talk a little bit about this year's festival poster? I know that each year you have a unique poster created by a designated individual. Can you talk about this year's poster?
Our poster that's been released so far for this year is done by Batan, who is one of our manga artists who's coming via the Mint, so the Manga International Network Team initiative. And so Batan's poster, which she will talk more about, Batan will actually be one of our featured guests and a member of our opening panel to kick off TCAF on Friday night, June 5th, and she'll talk a little bit more about the poster. But the poster is very much meant to symbolize that sort of deep partnership and appreciation for the comic arts, both in Canada and in Japan. You can see that one of the elements in the poster is actually the Japanese maple. So it's meant to sort of mimic also the maple leaf in Canada, but also that sort of close partnership and affiliation between the two countries. Not just for, partnership through the comic arts, but sort of to talk about this sort of renewed partnership of bringing and spotlighting international guests.
That's wonderful. Great symmetry there, that's for sure.
If I could add too, maybe this might be a little bit of a teaser, but we do have a second poster that's going to be launching soon. So our poster artist for the second poster is Chris Kim, who is a Toronto-based artist and illustrator, and also one of our authors from Conundrum Press. And so as a way of really reflecting and supporting our Canadian artists and Canadian publishing industry, Conundrum, of course, celebrating its 30th year, Chris Kim is doing a Canadian poster for us. And so that will be launching very soon as well.
Now, you mentioned that the event is taking place at the Mattamy Centre, and last year was the first time for anyone, I guess, at the Toronto Comic Arts Festival to be there at that location. So I'm wondering, were there any lessons learned from that event to help improve this year's experience for attendees?
I think the big thing that we realize is sometimes changing people's memories of a particular thing is hard. We did have a few people who still went to the library. So we're really trying to stress in all of our publicity and all of our wayfinding that we are no longer at the Toronto Reference Library. And one of the things that we've really learned is, of course, being in a new space, like we were in the Toronto Reference Library for 15 years, is figuring out, what's needed in terms of wayfinding, helping people to find the artists that they're looking for. We have spent a little bit more time thinking about wayfinding, not only in terms of materials, but as I mentioned, we have almost 100% increase in the volunteers that we'll have on site to help people just figure out where to go, connect people with the exhibits and the artists that they're looking for. And I think for us, the most exciting thing about being in a new space is we were in a situation in the library in which the festival was so popular and we didn't have room to grow. And there's challenges, of course, with a new space, figuring out how best to communicate to people the way finding a new space and what the new space looks like. But it's also given the festival room to grow for the first time ever.
Yeah, it's always good to have more space and offer more to attendees. You mentioned a lot of different activities, a lot of different things happening, but what are you looking forward to most at this year's festival?
So that's always a hard and tricky thing because there's so many things year over year. I do think especially, last year was not only our first year in a new space, but it was the first year for all of us, I think, living through the new political reality that we're living in that's impacting, people's ability to travel, people's ability to collaborate across borders in the way that they hope. And I think a heartening thing to see this year is not only the fact that we do have such a large international cohort of artists coming, but the fact that there is such a determination amongst people to come to the festival and meet and collaborate with people. I think art is something that is so culturally and historically important. And I think that sometimes it's overlooked that art, especially in a time like now, is incredibly vital. And I think I'm just looking forward to the fact that we have such tenacity amongst our exhibitors and our artists that it might not be easy for everybody to travel and come to the festival, but people are determined that it's important for them to collaborate with other artists, to have those interactions with the public, and to really make sure that their art is seen and represented.
Yeah, definitely important in this day and age. And as you mentioned, there are a lot of outside forces that are, I guess, working against the creative juices of everybody, but it's great that we can all get together and gather together and celebrate. I think that's what it's all about. So here's a loaded question. What makes TCAF different or maybe better than the other festivals that are taking place today?
Oh boy, I wouldn't go so far as to say better, but I can definitely tell you, what for me has always made TCAF unique. And also very pragmatically, one of the things that makes it unique is we are amongst a handful of comic arts festivals that are free to attend. So, we are a nonprofit. We are a free to attend festival. We try to keep exhibiting fees to, a minimum in terms of covering costs. We try to make the festival as accessible as possible for exhibitors. We do have a program called Access TCAF, which is table waivers that people can apply to. We have moved funds over to increase the number of table waivers we're able to offer year over year. And it's something that as a festival, we try to be as inclusive as possible in terms of what the arts are like. So one thing that does make TCAF, I would say, unique or amongst a handful of festivals is that you will see very established artists tabling alongside up and coming creators. It's something that year over year, when we're doing the exhibitor applications, we want to make sure that a certain portion of our exhibitor evaluations are people who our early career professionals, maybe folks who've just graduated from art school or who are just starting out in their career, alongside people that are more established. So not only are we free and accessible to attend, we try to make a more sort of accessible and inclusive environment that actually reflects the spectrum of art and artists that are there and working in comic spaces, and especially thinking about ways in which the comic arts maybe haven't been as inclusive or as representative as they could be, and what we can do going forward to try to rectify that and create more equitable spaces.
That's pretty exciting. I can imagine some up-and-comer comic creator with their first book right next to a pro. That would be pretty something, that's for sure. So for anyone who wants to find out more about the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, where do you recommend they go online to find more information?
So you can find us online. We are torontocomics.com. You can also find us. We have a pretty vibrant and healthy community on Instagram, Blue Sky, LinkedIn. And, we're still leveraging our Facebook page. So you can definitely find us on Facebook and on YouTube as well. But especially LinkedIn, Blue Sky, we are very active on. And, a lot of comics community are still very active on those platforms, or, of course, our website.
Very good. Well, Amie, those are all the questions I have for you. But I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
Oh boy, that's a big question. I think the thing I would say is what I hope for TCAF going forward, as we have this new chapter of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival at our new location, is that more than ever, people understand that the comic arts are for everyone. There is not one type of comics reader. There is not one type of comics platform. We're very excited to welcome back this year our partners at the Graphic Medicine International Collective, who, are the intersection of healthcare and comics, showing that, there's so many applications of comics beyond sort of traditional ways that people conceive of. But we also have people, re-envisioning superheroes in new and amazing ways. One of our featured guests, Hugo Canudo, who's coming from Brazil, he has re-envisioned superhero characters as Brazilian orishas. And so I think there's so many opportunities for comics. And so I really hope that whether or not folks would consider themselves comics readers, people take this as an opportunity to come check out some pretty cool art and just sort of prepare to be surprised.
Thanks to Amie for the chat. You can discover more about the Toronto Comic Arts Festival at Toronto Comics on all social media channels and at torontocomics.com. And thank you for tuning in to the True North Country Comics podcast. I invite you to visit the True North Country Comics website to listen to even more conversations with creators about making comic books and graphic novels. You can follow along at True North Country Comics on most social media platforms, and you're encouraged to send any and all feedback to John at truenorthcountrycomics.com. Thanks for tuning in, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2026.